Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Now, Hadithi Africa has created a safe space for communities and their stories and lived experiences to be conversed openly as a form of entertainment and education as part of a collective. Through music-driven storytelling, social issues such as racism, sexism, domestic violence, alcoholism, xenophobia, LGBTI are shared and discussed, leading to increased tolerance and understanding within and between the communities. The organization is hosting a storytelling competition in Braamfontein and Port Elizabeth, and we're joined now in studio by Lazola Belle, who is the co-founder of Hadithi Africa. Lazola, thank you so much for making the time to come through. Hadithi Africa, an amazing concept. Tell us about it.
Thank you, Griselda, for having me.
Desiree.
Oh, Desiree.
It's okay.
It's, you know, I think where it started from is the idea that storytelling is such a powerful instrument in getting information passed down generationally. We still see it today in different forms, but even the traditional one of verbal storytelling when people connect is such an important thing. And if we look at the African continent at large, we're dealing with a continent that actually does not know itself. The people don't know each other, they don't know their stories, and they don't take time to understand their stories. That's why sometimes we see the conflicts that we see in our society. And so we said, look, let's create a space where people can share their personal stories, their anecdotes. Because at the end of the day, without that, we just summarize who we are, and it's actually not who we are.
Especially because the work that I do here, what we're doing, having this interview, is a form of storytelling, but news is brief and it just goes in and out, and there needs to be a continuation, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think what generally is lacking is that while we have beautiful stories amongst each other, there's no form of digitization at a community level to allow for generations to come to go and tap into what I was, experiencing in my lifetime. And so what we're saying that let's not have stories over, a braai and then leave it at that. Let's actually digitize the stories, let's formalize them, let's make them alive, let's make people understand their stories matter. Yeah. Right, and so that we can actually impact societies in ways that are very tangible and very human to ourselves as Africans. Yeah.
What is the importance of a society that knows itself?
Let me give you a little story. Just yesterday, right? I was saying to someone, no, we've got the storytelling show, we've got one happening tomorrow, and etc., etc. And the organization is called Hadithi Africa. So a gentleman comes up to me and says, do you speak Swahili? And I say, no, I don't. He says, oh, I do. I'm from Kenya. It's Hadithi. Right? I'm saying, okay, wow. Cool. So that's one example of what it can trigger. Because had I not mentioned that, perhaps that gentleman from Kenya would not even have approached me.
That process of learning wouldn't have happened.
We end up having a beautiful conversation, which I think will take forward. So it's so important that we understand that
you should have corrected me at the beginning.
I already made a mistake with the name, so I don't know. So it's very important that people understand that what actually moves people is personal anecdotes. We see even in how campaigns happen, it goes down to the story of the individual. Yeah. And so that's the importance of storytelling in the modern age.
In this modern time when populations are growing exponentially in the continent, the world, which stories matter?
I think everyone's stories matter. I think what is key is whether we believe that those stories matter. And often at a time we don't. We just think, I'm just one person from Kai, and then we don't really elevate that story. But actually, it's the stories that matter, because when we talk about success stories, for example, we're nitpicking particular people. What does it do for the general African? They think, I'm not good enough. Yeah. But there's a lot of successful people whose stories are untold, whose stories are unwritten, whose stories are not digitized. So all the stories matter. What is key is whether the individuals, the people in communities, are able to tell their stories beautifully. Yeah. But let's be honest, a beautifully told story lingers. A story, a good, powerful story, told badly, is forgotten.
Now, for a long time, the story of Africa was the dark continent. These days, we're talking about struggling economies, we're talking about gender-based violence. Is that who we are in the 21st century, or are there other stories we're missing out on?
Well, there's a lot of history that is missing in Africa, let's be honest with that. But the beautiful thing about where we are as a society now is that information does not lie underneath anymore. So it means that when we say it's a dark continent, I can do a Google search and say, oh, which dark continent? From what I see here, it's not the case. But I think more than anything, we're seeing the likes of the Ethiopian airline, which is really connecting the continent. So we can fly anywhere and we can actually see, oh, look at that. Actually, the continent is moving. I mean, one of the things that we do at Hadithi is we curate trips in the continent. And often at a time is we don't research the country because what we find out there is very dark. And when you land there, you see something different from what you thought of the continent. So it's a time to really say, hey, go out there and see for yourself, but also understand there's many stories, and perhaps the story you know is not the only story.
Changing your perception.
Absolutely.
Now, the other big challenge, and I would like you to tell me if that's changing at all, has been that for the longest of time, I was watching CNN the other day, and there was a person from the US who came to South Africa to do a documentary about lizards, a type of lizard. The one other big challenge has been that other people are telling our stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has that changed?
It hasn't changed at the broadcast level. Yet, I don't think, because we fixated that the kind of storytelling needs big productions. Whereas now with the modern age of small productions, social media productions, cell phones.
Yeah, this one example I'm making was one person who came to South Africa just with his camera and started using social media.
Exactly. So we need to catch on to that. We need to understand that's where storytelling lives. And it allows us then to start telling those local stories. But I think right now we think they don't matter. And I'm saying they do. Take your camera, take your phone, and go do a 5-minute documentary of your township and then post that, because that immediately becomes broadcast material and it starts to help reperspectify where you are. So that perhaps is changing. I've seen some good stuff happening in Kenya as well with mobile journalism. But of course, it's not changing fast enough given the challenges that we're still facing as the continent and given the scale of the continent. But it is showing good signs. And so it's encouraging. What
kind of buy-in are you experiencing? Are people coming through to your events?
Well, for starters, we're on a national TV station, right? So there's the progress there. But we're 1 year in. People are coming. We generally have full houses, about 40, 50 people. That's the capacity for our venues. But people are still unsure. What do you mean by storytelling, right? So they really are unsure because they necessarily didn't see storytelling as a show. Because people still separate TV as a storytelling platform from just actually interacting as a storytelling platform and how powerful that can be. And if TV is that powerful, how powerful can communities be if they got together on a monthly level to really share the anecdotes?
So tell us, how do you select your storytellers? Is it authors? Is it poets? How does it happen?
It's general, right? So we'd put out a theme and say this theme for this month is... this month is Back in the Day, who has a story that is aligned to the theme he wants to share. But also what we're trialing out now for next week's show in Braamfontein is to say, hey, you know what, your story is worth something. Let's run a competition and you come and tell us a story about this theme, and then if it's the best story, you win $5,000. So we're trying different ways for people to come out with their stories.
So incentives as well.
Exactly. So we're creating those different ways for people to actually realize that I've got a story and I need to share it.
Give us your details in terms of when people who are interested and want to come through, where do they go and how do they get access?
Cool. Our website is hadithia.africa. Social media, Facebook, Hadithia Africa, YouTube, go and check us out there, Hadithia Africa. And then tomorrow actually, we've got an audition for Storytellers in Braamfontein at Bannister Hotel. We also got a show there on Wednesday at Bannister Hotel at 6. And then tonight, if you're in Port Elizabeth, I'm actually flying out there. We've got a show tonight at Artec at EC on 36 Bed Street.
So quite busy.
Come through. Well, we'll try.
Lazola Belle, the co-founder of an amazing concept, Hadithi ya Afrika.